Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Growth Over Grades podcast, where we talk about education ideas and topics that matter most to our Spaces EDU educator community. My name is Melody McAllister, and I'm your host. At the beginning of each new episode, I'm going to feature an amazing educator in our community. This week, I want to give a shout out to teacher, author, and leader, Bonnie Nieves. Bonnie is an active member in our community. She is on a mission to help her students love the learning process and reflect deeply so they can take what they're learning in class and solve problems in the real world. She regularly shares what she is learning with her PLN. So thank you for all you do, Bonnie. Another educator who regularly shares with his PLN is Tim Cavey, our podcast guest today. Tim is the leader behind Teachers on Fire. He actually created it. He is someone who has inspired me and countless others to continue to grow and share in our content creation. You can catch him on all socials, and I'm going to make sure to add everywhere you can find him in the show notes. Recently, I read one of his articles titled, "Should Teachers Attend Student Performance Outside of School?" It was a thoughtful piece that was about protecting the time that teachers have after school. And I really admire how Tim uses his experiences as a classroom teacher and administrator to share in a respectful way that times are changing. Teachers have always worked tirelessly, but these last couple of years have asked even more from them. So today we're going to talk about protecting healthy boundaries of our teachers. But before we get to that, Tim, how are you doing today? And can you tell us a little bit about your background?
I am doing so well. Glad to be here, Melody. Thank you so much for the invitation. My background in education, well, I've been teaching. This is embarrassing to say because I remember being that young teacher, right? But this is year 22 in education for me. And I would say, in terms of summarizing my journey, I really hit a bit of a corner, a positive corner, about 5 years ago. And that's when I started my master's degree, my master's in educational leadership degree. I started the Teachers on Fire podcast, and I started connecting. Suddenly my Twitter account became a thing, and I started learning by leaps and bounds. And since then, I've taken an administrative position, and here we are today.
I love that. And I'm putting Teachers on Fire. So I hope that you guys will follow him on Twitter if you're not already doing so. But you do have quite the following, and it must feel really good to be able to share so much of what you're learning and what others are learning. On all your socials, you have quite a following. That has to feel good.
Well, thank you very much. I don't feel like I'm very special. I'm just someone who is nerdy enough to actually create content and put it out there. And I'm always flattered and honored when people resonate with anything that I put out there.
Yeah, well, I'm glad our paths have crossed. I've actually been a guest on, I think, one of your podcasts.
Yeah.
And something that I've learned from you is just like to constantly be leveling up, just being professional, putting your stuff out there, being very receptive and inclusive to others. And you kind of keep us on our toes, making sure that we're putting our best out there. So I really appreciate that about you. But I'm so glad you're on here today.
Well, I tell teachers I'm not going to should on you, and that's always a battle because I do get a little preachy sometimes. You're right, but yeah, if what I put out there is encouraging or inspiring or thought provoking, then I've done my job.
Yes, and you do it well. And today we're going to talk about that article. And I first saw it on LinkedIn, and it's like, the title of it here, I have to go to my notes because I'm going to butcher it, but should teachers attend student performance outside of school? Can you tell us a little bit of like why you decided to write that piece? And I'm going to drop it in the comments.
Thank you so much for just bringing it up today. I think it's such an important topic. So yeah, the background to answer your question, I had to sit through a parent conference with one of my teachers last year, and it was at a difficult, or let's say a challenging point in the year. And these parents had a bit of an agenda, and they were sort of on a bit of a crusade in terms of, I'm choosing my words carefully,
Right.
but they were trying to put it out there that this teacher didn't care enough about their daughter. And one of the ways they were going to prove that was to ask her, well, why didn't you attend our daughter's performance? And they were talking about a private student performance, a musical happening outside of school, completely outside of school time. And I was just so indignant at the question. And I myself was asked 3 different times by 3 different students just in the last term alone to attend a musical, a gymnastics performance, a choir performance, these different performances. And I think teachers are already asked to do so much,
Hmm.
so much. The list is growing every year. And even just school sanctioned evening performances are already a big ask, right? I'm thinking about things like Meet the Teacher and
Hmm.
band concerts and other concerts and field trips that go long. And there's already a bit of a list there. And
Right.
so to add on to that and say, oh, you should be going to this, that, and the other student's performance, I thought is just so unreasonable and unfair. And I have to preface this by saying that parents and students mean well. In fact, it's really touching that they are inviting us to their thing. But I just think I draw the line with saying you should have been there. And this was an obligation that you dropped and you're not showing up for our child. I think that's where I draw the line.
Right, right. Do you feel like in previous years that you did attend, like, was that something that you actually did, or have you felt like this, for as long as you can remember?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think I went to a boys my first year at the school, and maybe that's telling. My first year at the school here in Vancouver, I attended a hockey event in the evening because it was close to my apartment at the time. This is a long time ago, 15 years ago, something like that. And that's the only one that I can remember. I
Mhm.
think over the years I haven't been invited to a ton. I think three invites in one term was a high, and I don't know if that's saying something about our parent community or just, 2022. I don't know. Maybe it's just a post COVID thing. But to answer your question, I think I could only recall one time, and I think I've probably declined any other invite I've had over the years.
And is it the usual response, like, pretty respectful when you can't make it or you decide not to?
Yeah, I think so. I think most parents and students totally get it, and they might be a little disappointed. I mean, again, it's super touching because it means that
Right.
student really wants you to be there. They want you to share in their moment and celebrate the hard work they put in and the amazing achievements that they are in the course of. But yeah, I that's all I can recall right now.
Yeah. Do you feel like do you feel like since the pandemic and since we're trying to get back into school, since the pandemic, do you feel like it's especially right now you have to fight and protect teacher boundaries? Do you feel like that's more of an issue than it ever has been?
Absolutely, and I mean, something I've wondered about, I'm sure you've wondered about, others have wondered about is teacher fatigue right now, which we would all agree is really high across the
Mhm.
board, most schools and districts in North America. Is teacher fatigue a product of COVID? I mean, during COVID, we could certainly attribute a lot of that to all these added restriction. I mean, I don't even want to get into it, but all of the COVID life, we're sort of out of most of the restrictions. Although I will say people around here want to bring back masks, so there's that. But we're out of most of the restrictions. Is some of that momentum or PTSD sticking with us? Is that part of it, or is simply the life and job and expectations of the teaching profession at an all-time high? And I feel like maybe it's a bit of both
Right.
because I look at my inbox, I look at all the administrivia I have to follow up on, and it can't be done. It can't
Right.
all be done really at the end of the day.
And I mean, and it's probably even changed since you have a family of your own, when you were teaching before and now, and you want to protect that space. I think that is very healthy. And I think as a leader in your school to show that you protect that time after school is it also helps your staff to like feel like they can do the same thing, which is what boundaries are for. Um,
Can I
yeah,
jump in on that?
sure.
So you mentioned something that is close to my heart as well, and that is our single colleagues. And I see a few now. This might be sensitive. I don't know,
Mhm.
but again, here's Tim Cavey pushing the envelope. So for some of our single colleagues, there's a temptation. Sometimes, have you heard of Parkinson's law? Are you familiar with
No, I
Parkinson's law?
haven't.
Okay,
Parkinson's
so
law, no.
So I wrote a piece in September about survival strategies for new teachers, and I think this is so important. Parkinson's law says that the tasks will expand to fill the time allotted to them.
Right.
The tasks will expand to fill the time allotted to them. So for the rookie teachers out there, and we know these wonderful colleagues who are keen, they are passionate about the work, they are willing to put in the extra hours. They're willing to stay at the school for long periods of time, maybe 7, 8 p.m. to quote, finish the work for the next day. They are willing to go the distance. But sometimes that can be a danger, right?
Right.
Because when you look at and I'm not saying one status is better than another, but when you look at that married mother of 3 or 4, she can't afford to stay at the school past,
Right.
3:15 or whatever. She's gone. Like you just have to make discriminating decisions and get out of there and maybe fit in like maybe an hour of work in the evening or whatever it happens to be. So I think Parkinson's law is something that I would want to pass on to any single teacher. And I would say, look, if you allow your whole evening to fill or if you allow your tasks to fill the entire evening, they will. They
Right.
will eat up your life if you
Right.
allow them. And so those boundaries might be harder to make when you don't have children demanding your time or, X, Y, and Z, but do it. Do it.
Right.
Somehow sign up for adult ultimate frisbee leagues or whatever you have to do to fill that time and create some boundaries.
I love
Yeah.
that. And, I'm going to be honest and say that as, as a public school teacher with 5 children, I
Yeah.
was one of
Wow.
those teachers, yeah, that stayed. I tried
Mm,
to limit it to like one night a week where I stayed late so that I wouldn't
yeah.
have to take work home throughout the week. But some of my colleagues had just as many or a few kids, and they spent even longer at schools every
Wow.
night with their kids
Wow.
at school. And I always thought,
Mm,
and my kids like to hang out. Sometimes they would ride the bus home, but sometimes they would hang out with me after school. But honestly, if they were with me, I got less work done. So I really didn't
yeah.
like them to, and they thought they could break all the rules, right? But
Yeah.
here's the thing. I just, I just felt like how unhealthy is it for our students, our kids, they're students too, to be at school like that long. So I really
Mhm.
tried to put boundaries in place, but it does get hard when you're teaching a new grade level, when you're trying to, implement new strategies that you've never done, and you want to have all of this, the preparation for it. It does get a little bit hard. But what do you think? How do you think that like actually implementing these boundaries for yourself and for administrators to put in place for their staff, how do you think that contributes to student growth?
At the end of the day, student growth and student learning is dependent on vibrant, well teachers. So, some of the boundaries that I like to encourage teachers to follow and, like, with permission, do this. Number one, mental health days are sick days. So, take those if you need them. We don't mark or grade everything. We learn to say this is good enough. I already mentioned Parkinson's law. So, create boundaries around your work time. We don't feel guilty about saying no to coaching, as hard as that might be. And as hard as the athletic department might push us, if we don't have bandwidth for it, we shouldn't sign up for it. That's just going to build resentment. We don't apologize for ignoring inboxes on the weekends. And Melody, to answer your question, when we do all of these things, when we create some distance and space within our professional work, it actually makes us better, more attractive human beings. And I'm, when I say attractive, I'm
Mhm.
talking about fun people to be with,
Right.
because I work in a middle school, and if you are tired and grumpy, that's not going to work. It doesn't fly. You've got to have the emotional bandwidth to be there, to be present, to engage. You've got to have patience and let's say
Yeah.
emotional generosity. So to answer your question, yeah, kids are going to learn better. They're going to grow more from teachers who are well, teachers who are balanced, teachers who have some boundaries. And you may not be dotting every I and crossing every T, but if you're well slept, if you've got some emotional bandwidth to spare for your kids, they are going to resonate. They're going to be with you, and in general, they're going to learn and grow better.
I love that response so much. I'm like taking notes because, I'll put this in the show notes as well. And I love that Nicole Taylor, she's one of my favorite educators, and she's joining in with a comment. And she's saying, modeling and supporting student boundaries is a win for everyone. Agreed. And to go for what you say, when our students see that we're doing this, it's building that, for them too. It's building that example for them as well.
Oh
And
yeah.
just that whole person uh, perspective is wonderful.
I've been thinking about writing a piece, Melody, for kids that says, so I did write a piece recently about anxiety among our
Right.
students, even among our high performing students. And you have to put this so carefully, but sometimes some assignments or some learning activities, you may not need to finish every last bit of it. You may need to move on, and I have to tread so carefully there because we love our responsible students. We love our disciplined students who are committed to the task. But, when you're working at 10:30 p.m. on question number 28, maybe it's time to go to bed.
Right. Totally agreed. I've
Mhm.
actually talked with parents about that. When they were
Yeah.
struggling, I had a parent that was very upset, came in. She's like, my kid was doing this math work from the time he got home until he went to bed. And I was just
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh. I was like, I never meant for that to be. If just
Yeah.
know that you have my support to cut that off and, send me a note that he's just struggling and I can help him because I do think that that's unhealthy as well.
It's about the learning, it's not about the compliance, right? I
Right.
mean, if they have the concept, then call it a night.
Right. I love that. It's about the learning and not the compliance. I love that so much. So let me go to the next question. How do you use your role in education? Because you kind of have a different, like in the United States, we don't necessarily see what your role is, but how do you use it to protect the healthy boundaries for teachers?
Yeah, so again, I'm part-time vice principal and I'm part-time teaching, and most of my teaching is ADST or applied design skills and technologies. So a lot of technology stuff that really lights my fire for sure. How do I use that position to protect teacher boundaries? Well, I just went through a list of
Right.
encouragements that I can make to teachers, permissions, give yourself grace, give yourself space, and let go of perfectionism. And so I listed some of those specific things.
Yes.
I don't want to come on here and pretend that we've got this perfectly figured out. I mean, we
Right.
still have tired teachers on our team. And so we're always looking, my principal and I are always looking for ways to lighten that load, or, does that meeting really need to happen? Or is there a day that we can give teachers? One really tiny example is that in past years, we've had teachers contributing to the school newsletter on an assigned schedule. And this year, my principal and I, we're just doing it. Every
Right.
week, we're writing it ourselves. We're saying, hey, if you want to contribute an article, you can, but we're just going to take that off your plate. So looking for those kinds of opportunities is kind of the best I can do, but I'm always open to ideas, and I'm reading and looking around just like you are.
Yeah, I love that you said that you're taking stuff off of teachers' plates and then to let go of perfectionism. It reminds me, I had a colleague who was having her first child, and she was definitely one of those people that was wanted to be perfect in everything that she did because she wanted to be the best. And I remember her counseling her and just saying, this is not going to be your teacher of the year. Like your life is about to change in a way that you don't even realize yet because you have yet to go through it. But I feel like that is something that we definitely need to give ourselves permission to do because we are not just teachers. We have so many different roles in life and it makes us who we are. And I just got to say too, as I appreciate as an educator for a leader to say, let go of that perfectionism. Let me take this off your plate. I feel like if more administrators did that, we would have healthier teachers. And I can say I didn't have that much in my, public school
Hmm.
experience. So I really do appreciate that outlook that you have and that you bring. So this is a little bit different, but have you received any pushback?
No, none that I can think of. I thought about that question,
Mm.
Melody, and I can't think of any in particular. I mean, there are the only, it's not really pushback, but with some teachers, I can think of one or two amazing, amazing colleagues who are of the mindset of, I'm going to track down every last learning activity that any student has not submitted. And I think that right there, I'm in a constant sort of gentle debate with them about, hey, in a standards-based grading system, we can accurately assess student learning against standards, and we may not have assignment 9 out of 9. We might be
Mhm.
going on only 8. It's okay if sometimes we don't receive every last submission. You know what I mean? Because think about the mission. It's about the learning, and it's about, when it comes to the report card, it's about accurately reporting. And so sometimes I get into sort of, you know, I call them gentle debates with some of my colleagues, just to let go and to move on. We don't have to chase little Trevor for something that he didn't submit 2 weeks ago. Let's move on, that kind of thing. So
I like that because I love that outlook so much, because as much as we're struggling as human beings and as educators, our students are also struggling. And you're right, like, they are more than just a student. And so recognizing that is definitely key to health, not just for your teachers, but for your students as well. So thank you so much for sharing that. We've talked a lot, and if you are watching and you have a question to ask Tim, I just think he is such an amazing educator, and his knowledge base is wide. So don't be afraid to ask a question. But something that I'd like to ask everybody that comes onto our podcast, and this doesn't necessarily have to do with anything that we've just been talking about, but it can. But what is one piece of wisdom you'd like to share with other educators that you just feel like is really on your mind?
I'm going to jump at that opportunity and give teachers some hard-hitting phone advice. Can I do that?
Yes. Oh gosh, yes. I'm taking notes.
So I just wrote about this last week, so it's definitely on my mind. But I hear sometimes on this topic of teacher fatigue, I hear sometimes that, man, administrators are not respecting my time. They're emailing me all hours of the weekend and evenings, or I'm getting messages from colleagues on the staff chat or this or that. And so I'm going to give you a couple of radical pieces of phone advice. And the first one, keep your phone out of your bedroom at night. I think that pays dividends in terms of just your brain will go into a different space. I promise you, when your phone is not in the room, and it will be painful. It'll be a little bit painful, but do it.
I don't even know if I could do that, Tim.
It's so painful for most people, but there's an incredible level of emotional peace that comes with it. And then number two, this is even crazier. So buckle your seatbelt. Keep your phone on do not disturb 24/7. And I've heard George Couros talk about this. I know he does it as well, but keep your phone on. You might say, well, I'm going to miss stuff from my kid. No, you won't. No, you won't. So my answer to that, and my wife will tell you, I look at my phone a lot. So there's no problem there. But there is something about being in the middle of a task and never being disturbed. So no ring, no vibration, no phone lighting up with a notification. I checked my iPhone stats. I get 168 notifications a day right now. That's 168 mental wins for me because my phone just lies there silently. It never does anything until I pick it up. Right. In fact, it still doesn't do anything. So when I pick it up, then I can see, and I've got badges turned on for iMessage, for Google Chat. So if you message me, I will see it in time. Although you and I know I'm not very good at Voxer, but but I will get back to you if I see that I missed a call. I can return. Like, it's not the end of the world to miss notifications. And I'll tell you this, I am the point person for emergency subs at my middle school. So in the mornings, it's important for me to actually check my phone a few times in case all hell is breaking loose and we have to scramble at school. But again, I keep my phone on do not disturb. And so it is never bothering me. It's never barking at me or commanding me to divert my attention to it. I treat it as a tool. And so I pick it up when I want to. So those two things, keep your phone out of your bedroom at night and keep your phone on do not disturb. That's for anyone who is being driven crazy by notifications or emails. And I'll tell you this, I can go 48 hours on a weekend without even looking at my inbox, my school inbox. I just refuse sometimes because anything in there doesn't need to be responded to until at least Sunday night. You got to give me at least Sunday night or maybe Monday morning, but there's nothing burning me right now on a Saturday morning that I actually have to respond to. So there's permission as well to ignore your inbox. But yeah, a couple of phone rules that I hope will give someone a little bit more sanity.
Well, again, and if you're really living by this, and I know that you are, you're also giving everybody else permission around you to do the same, and that is so
Mhm.
healthy. A couple of things that crossed my mind when you were saying that is just being able to complete a task. I mean, you're right.
Yeah.
I have most notifications off my phone. Like I don't. I
Yeah.
like you, I check my phone when it's the right time. But I do probably check it a little bit too much. But I love that just being able to complete those tasks make us healthier, so that is great advice. And we have a comment coming in. Ooh, Jamie Nicholson. Jamie Nicholson shares, phones were banned at my high school this year during class time, and it's revolutionary. Kids talking and collaborating. It's incredible.
That
Mm,
that's a big one, Jamie. I'm right there with you, and that's Melody. Something else I want to write about is in favor of the phone bans at school for students. I think it is so. I've read some pieces, some blog posts from teachers who are literally leaving the profession. They are so tired. High school teachers who are ready to quit. They are so tired of the every class by class phone battle. That's a whole other topic, but yeah,
yeah.
Jamie, I agree with you.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Jamie. Thank you for sharing. And I got to say too that like I felt like it's even harder for us though to not have our phones as teachers too. Sometimes we have it's a distracting while we're teaching. And I know that when we have young kids, and there's been a couple of emergency situations that I actually had while I was teaching that thank God I had a cell phone. Um, but for the most part, it can be also distracting for teachers as well as students. So,
It can be. It can be. I mean, my own take on that is I think teachers should have their phone with them for
mhm,
a number of different reasons. For one, I'm a big seesaw educator, and so
right?
documenting student work and catching photos and videos, that's an important part of the seesaw life. So I think there are lots of good reasons. I wouldn't extend the phone ban to educators. We're professionals. We have a staff room. We don't follow all of the exact same parameters that our students do, but
Yeah.
yeah,
But
I
there's
agree with you.
good but just having some boundaries is always good for everybody.
It is.
Another thing that I really like that you said, it's just, it's not the end of the world to miss notifications. And I think that we as a society, that is that's just something that is really hard to accept because it's that what is that in our brain, our
FOMO.
chemistry. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's just like we want that so much. So I love that you're sharing. And I'm going to make sure to include all of these articles in the show notes for sure. Um, but yeah, and I gotta say that I don't miss I don't miss all like I don't miss missing notifications, and that's really good for my mental health as well.
Mhm. Yeah, me too.
And then you get to actually enjoy your weekend. And then to put it back into what we're talking about, then you are a healthy person ready to go for your kids on Monday as much as
Right?
possible. You get a little bit more rest. And are you probably tell your teachers don't grade on the weekends.
I don't. I don't tell them that. For some teachers, so here's the thing, for some teachers, if they've got that cup of coffee on a beautiful, peaceful morning and they're sitting in a cafe or in their living room with their cat and they want to grade, then go to it. I mean, maybe that's your sane time of the week.
I
So you've
love
got to
that.
figure that out. Yeah.
Something that really resonates with me for you as a leader is just that it's like what works for you, do it. It's
Exactly.
not a
Yeah.
one size fits all. There are definitely things that we can do to make sure that we're all protecting our health. But you do what you need to do. And when I asked you earlier about pushback, when I was responding to your article, about protecting teacher time, I was one of
Mm,
those teachers
right.
that went to all my students after work.
Amazing.
Yeah, and it was something that was just a part of who I was, and it was a little bit less as I had kids and everything, but I also found a way to incorporate and I gotta say my students were always I felt like they were a part of my family, and my
Right.
kids, like my family and my students, we were always it just worked for me.
And this was during your time in Alaska, right, Melody?
In Texas, when I was teaching in
Or
Texas.
Texas. Okay. Was it a smaller community?
No, it was actually we were
Oh.
one of the largest
Oh.
elementary. Yeah, I did work in a tiny little community when I first started teaching, and that was probably where that became a because it was a small community, to be honest, and I took that with me to the larger district that I ended
Uh,
up teaching at. Yeah.
because I did get one interesting comment on LinkedIn from someone who is in a really small community, and they said, "Hey, this is like one big family here. This is
Mhm.
what we do. We're in each other's lives." And I can get that, but and I commend you. I mean, that is truly generous. The only anxiety I have, and this is not a should on you, but I just think, what norms are we setting up for our
Right.
parent community? are they now
Yeah.
expecting like this is what a good teacher does, you know?
Right.
So that's where I get anxious, but
And yeah, and
yeah,
it gave me a lot to think about too. And if you're doing that as a teacher, does it make your colleagues feel like they have to do that as well? And
right.
and that's when number one, you have to be comfortable with what you're doing. If you're not the teacher that wants to do that, you also have to feel comfortable in not doing that, even if you see a colleague. But it did
Yep.
make me think about that. And that's not something that I used to think about at all, to be honest. But
Mm,
as a leader, regardless if you're an admin or, just a teacher, you are leading by your example. So that's what I loved about this article that you wrote is just that it gives you some things to think about. And you even put in that article things that you can tell your parents as an administrator, hey, we're not pushing, our teachers to be at people's games and stuff after school hours, but here's some things that you guys can do, in lieu of that. So I did
mhm.
appreciate that. And I'm definitely going to include all of that in our show notes. And I want to respect your time. So thank you so much for being here, Tim. I can't tell you how much I think of you. You're an amazing educator, and I'm so
Ah,
glad you came on today.
thank you so much for having me. This was an absolute blast, and I'm so grateful to be connected with you.
Thank you. And if you're listening today, I just want you to join our Spaces EDU community. It's on facebook.com/groups /Spaces EDU so we can continue the conversation. But until then, I'll see you on the next episode. Bye, everybody. Thank you for joining in today.